Empowerment is not about money. It is about awakening.
In the serene countryside of Enugu, where the evening breeze carries whispers of ancestral strength, lived a woman whose every presence was poetry. Nneoma, she was the kind of woman whose grace could calm storms. Tall, radiant, and poised, she walked with a regal gentleness that drew both respect and admiration. Her eyes glowed with quiet intelligence, and her smile, though tender, carried the shadow of pain. Nneoma was an orphan. Her father, a humble teacher, died of low blood pressure a month before she finished her secondary education. Her mother had departed years earlier, leaving behind memories and unfinished prayers. Yet, even in grief, Nneoma excelled. She graduated with brilliant results. Her teachers were certain she would conquer the academic world. But poverty can silence even the loudest dreams. One warm evening, Fate arrived wearing agbada. A convoy of black SUVs rolled into Mazi Ezedike's compound, Nneoma's uncle. From the midst of the glittering entourage stepped Chief Obinna Okafor, a man of towering influence and old money. His name synonymous with wealth, power, and refined taste. Chief Obinna had seen Nneoma at a community gathering. It wasn't just her beauty that caught his attention, but the quiet nobility in her composure, the way she spoke with grace, her humility, her brilliance that radiated beyond words. Chief Obinna spoke to her uncles with humility and promise. He said, "I want to marry your niece, and I promise I will make her education my priority. I will train her to any level she desires. A mind as bright as hers should not waste in the shadows of hardship." The family, touched by his assurance, agreed. To them, it was an answered prayer, a blessing from heaven wrapped in luxury. Nneoma, though nervous, saw it as the open door she had prayed for. The marriage rites were ground, drums echoed, dancers twerked, elders blessed. Nneoma, dressed in royal choral beads and shimmering George wrapper, looked every bit a queen stepping into destiny. After the festivities, she left her village and journeyed to Lagos with Chief, the city of dreams and contradictions. Chief Obinna's mansion in Lekki Phase 1 was a marvel of architecture. Chandeliers like falling stars, marble floors that mirrored the sky. The first weeks after the wedding unfolded like silk. To Chief Obinna Okafor, she was everything a man of stature could desire. Refined, respectful, and radiant. And to Nneoma, Chief was the answer to 1,000 whispered prayers. A man who had promised not only marriage, but a future reborn through education. One golden evening, Nneoma approached her husband. Her tone was gentle, her hands folded before her like a petition. "My husband," she began softly, "you remember your words to my uncles. The new semester begins in 2 months. I thought perhaps this is the right time to begin the process." Chief Obinna's fork paused midway. He looked at her, not with anger, but with the weary expression of a man remembering a debt he now regretted. "My dear Nne, I have not forgotten, but this is not the season to rush. You have just entered a new home. A woman's first duty is to settle the foundation before chasing other ambitions." The words were polished, yet hollow. Nneoma lowered her gaze respectfully, concealing the sin behind her calm. She knew evasion when she heard it, but she also understood wisdom. There are battles that silence fights better than speech. Nneoma was not the kind to let light die quietly. When Chief Obinna traveled, as he often did for business activities, Nneoma's real life began. While others spent their afternoons gossiping in saloons or shopping for diamonds, Nneoma devoted her time to purpose. She began by mentoring some of the housemates, teaching them English and etiquette, tutoring and solving problems for the neighbors' children. With her own savings, she enrolled the less privileged children in local schools, ensuring they had uniforms and textbooks. One afternoon, a visitor came to their home, a young man who worked for Chief Obinna. He approached Nneoma quietly and said, "Madam, I have always admired your patience. My mother once told me that education is not only in the classroom, but in character. You have taught me that truth is the most valuable thing. Those words broke something open inside her. That night, she took a decision, not of rebellion, but of renewal. She began studying from home, reading online materials, attending virtual seminars, and she volunteered with local NGOs, helping young women find courage in places where hope was scarce. She helped widows start small businesses, taught teenage girls about self-worth, and spoke in modest gatherings, not as a scholar, but as a sister. Her story spread quietly from one heart to another, from one life to the next. Years passed and Chief Obinna's influence grew. He had become a prominent sponsor of national programs on women empowerment, not out of conviction, but for the prestige it brought his company. When a Grand National Women's Empowerment Summit was announced at the Eco Convention Center, his foundation was listed among the top sponsors. What he did not know, however, was that one of the keynote speakers, Nneoma Okafor, was his own wife. The hall was majestic. Rows of dignitaries filled the seats. Ministers, CEOs, journalists, and cameras flashing like fireflies in rhythm. Chief Obinna arrived in a dark Italian suit, surrounded by reporters, proudly representing his foundation. He sat at the VIP table, unaware of what destiny was about to unfold. Moments later, the host's voice rang out across the hall. Ladies and gentlemen, we now welcome a woman whose journey from pain to purpose has inspired thousands. Please rise as we invite Mrs. Nneoma Okafor to the stage. A wave of murmurs swept through the audience. Chief Obinna froze, his smile fading slowly as if time had stopped moving. He turned sharply towards the stage, and there she was, his wife. But she was no longer just his wife. She was a vision, dressed in an elegant golden gown, tall, graceful, her confidence shining brighter like the morning sun. Nneoma stood behind the podium. Her fingers trembled slightly as she adjusted the microphone. She took a deep breath, smiled, and began. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I stand here not as a scholar by degree, but as a student of experience. I have learned that education is not confined to the walls of the university. It is born every time a woman refuses to remain ignorant of her own strength. You can start again at 40. You can rise again after failure. You can rebuild even after betrayal. Because empowerment is not about money. It's about awakening. And the day a woman truly awakens, society must adjust its crown. Rise from your pain. Refine it, redeem it. For when a woman transforms her wounds into wisdom, she becomes unstoppable, not only for herself, but for generations to come. Remember this, the rise of an enlightened woman is the rise of a wiser world. Her words ignited the room. The hall erupted in thunderous applause. Chief Obinna, sitting among dignitaries, hands trembling, almost ashamed, found his eyes moist. When the conference ended, journalists rushed to her. Her picture was on every major newspaper the next day. Chief Obinna approached her later that evening, humble, lost for words. He looked at her with new eyes, not as a wife, but as a legacy. You have become everything I once promised you, he said quietly. But you did it without me. She smiled gently and replied, no, my husband, I did it for us, because when a woman rises, the whole family learns to walk taller. Chief smiled gently and said, you have opened my eyes, Nne. I gave you wealth, but you gave me wisdom. It is time I honor my word. Tomorrow we begin your admission process, and this time with my full support. 2 weeks after, he enrolled her into the University of Lagos, where she studied sociology and women development studies. Nneoma graduated with distinction and was awarded for academic excellence. Her name on the lips of professors. Her story printed in newspapers. That evening, as both sat together on the balcony, Nneoma turned to her husband and said softly, I don't want this victory to end with me. Let's build something that outlives our names. Something that turns pain into power for others. He looked at her. The same woman he once silenced now sounded like destiny's echo. Without hesitation, he agreed. Thus was born the Grace Initiative Global, a foundation devoted to educating orphans, uplifting widows, and empowering forgotten women to rediscover their strengths. Nneoma became the face of the movement, graceful, articulate, and deeply compassionate. Chief Obinna became its backbone, funding, networking, and standing proudly beside the woman he once underestimated. His redemption, time in its gentle justice, rewarded them. God blessed their union with 3 children, 2 radiant daughters, and a son who carried his father's name and his mother's compassion. Their household was no longer a place of quiet wealth, but of active legacy. They had become a living testimony that when love evolves into purpose, it becomes eternal. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more interesting stories.